If you're looking for the epitome of a hands-on, activity-based teacher, look no further than Gale Regis. For 42 years, Gale taught students in Amesbury with unmatched enthusiasm and dedication.
She was firm, and they knew the rules. They always behaved for her, but she also did all sorts of activities and stuff with them that the kids were always interested in. They always loved science. They loved learning about the stuff. Her room was always decorated with everything. She had an ongoing, for years, decorations on the wall of lines of how much snowfall we had every year. She was always in charge of doing the snow guess every year of when we'd have the first snow count. The kids were always very much into science when she was teaching.
She was one of my favorite teachers of all time. I remember when I went to college to study to be a teacher, my science class, I knew all the answers because Gale just had this way of making lessons come alive. So I vividly remember being in her class and tracking hurricanes and I had a pet tornado.
If she was not your teacher, you still knew who she was and were jealous that you didn't get to spend time in her classroom.
Like when we were studying about the sun and the moon, she had us be the different places, and it was stuff that didn't just stick with you that day. It was stuff that it stayed with you far after her class. And so I remember in college when we hadn't taken those lessons in forever, they're like, how do you remember all this stuff? And I was like, well, I had the best science teacher ever, naturally.
Gale grew up in Amesbury and graduated from AHS in 1970. As a child, her parents, William and Frances Dodier, inspired in Gale and her sisters, Sandra and Brenda, a sense of curiosity about the world around them. She would later instill this same curiosity in her students. In 1974, she earned her Bachelor of Arts degree in elementary education from Salem State, and in 1975, she married her husband, Dave Regis. Her first third-grade class attended their wedding.
She basically was just someone I always turned to. She was someone, if I needed advice, she was one of the first ones I went to. It didn't matter if I was dealing with an issue with a student, with a parent, with an administrator, if I had something going on. She was the one I went to for all of that stuff. And I think she trained me well because now people come to me for those same reasons. So I feel like she passed it on to me when she left. And I became, the one where people come and talk to me. And I attribute that all to her as being one of my mentors in the school system.
Gale spent the first few years of her career teaching in Haverhill, but by 1976, she taught full-time at Amesbury Middle School. She primarily taught English and reading from 1976 to 1980, but eventually expanded her role to include science and social studies. When she made that transition, her lessons became more hands-on, helping to create sixth-grade traditions, such as Greek days and medieval days.
Working with Gale was so much fun, and she she was like our organizer. She kept everybody on track. She helped us keep organized. She would always help me for emails, like if it was okay to send an email or not, she would let us know. So I felt bad. I felt like it was always like, Gale, will you help us? And she would come on in. She always had her door open to us. So she was always welcoming us in. But she was a great advice giver. And I loved being able to learn from her as I learned how to be a teacher too. So I learned from her how to be a really great student. And then it was just really cool to teach along beside her too.
One of her students' favorite lessons was Beach Day on Plum Island. On Beach Day, Gale took her students to the beach and set up a number of workstations so they could record sand composition, life in tide pools, wave patterns, and more. In the classroom, her students would track hurricanes, observe clouds, and predict weather patterns. Gale created the AMS weather station that connected with the Boston Museum of Science and WBZ-TV Weather Network, a connection that led to her involvement in developing the current weather exhibit at the museum. Another project Gale is known for involves seismology. Gale received AEFI grants that allowed her to bring a seismograph into her classroom. The seismology project connected students with seismologists from Boston College and the Weston Observatory to collect data on worldwide plate and seismic movements.
The seismograph, I remember when we first got it, I remember when it first got hooked up, We actually went on a field trip down to Weston Observatory to check out, because that was the connection with the seismograph, and she loved that thing. And whole lessons on the earthquakes, the mapping, it tied into everything else, the math of it. And so it was really cool. And she actually ended up, I still have the recording on YouTube of the time she got mentioned on the news because of the seismograph. It was she was on the local news.
When she was not teaching, Gale was running the ski club and participating in AMS Idol. She is also the proud mother of her daughter Jessica and her son Matthew, who both became math teachers.
We were always looking up. We would go outside at night and see whatever satellite or comet or anything else was passing by. Whether it was warm or cold, it was usually cold. But she definitely has always had us looking up. Look up at the sky, look up at the clouds, and appreciate what's around us. But best mom.
Now that she is retired, she continues to be a fierce advocate for what is best for Amesbury students through her involvement on the AEFI board, including taking photos of our grants, such as Math on the River. Gale's students all remember her fondly. She had a knack for making science come to life and making students all feel special. To quote a former student, "Gale didn't just teach you the sun, she made you the sun."
She's a legend. She is the best, and her brain just works in really amazing ways to make experiences for people out of something that would seem so simple. And she doesn't overcomplicate things. And that's another really amazing thing about Gale, is that she is able to see in people maybe what they don't see, and then she is able to get you to a point that you didn't think you could be at.
She is Amesbury, she was a student here. She went to become a teacher here. She was an incredible teacher, mentor to other people, mentor to me, and then she left teaching and she still stayed dedicated to the schools, working with AEFI. She's involved. She even came back and ran a couple field trips for us that were science field trips that she developed after she retired. She came back to help us run it, to teach us how to do it. She's just always there.
She has made an impact and made a positive difference for so many people. And students that she had 6, 7 years ago, 20 years ago, 40 years ago, still remember her fondly and make sure that they say hello and talk about what they remember learning in her class. And yes, it was about weather or volcanoes or earthquakes, but it was also how she made them feel. And that's an incredible educator that can do things like that.
And because she's such a shining example of what an impact a teacher can make on her students, colleagues, community, and family, AEFI welcomes Gale Regis into its Hall of Honor.